Tutankhamun, better known today as King Tut, was not a powerful king. He ruled briefly. He died around the age of 18. And yet, no Egyptian ruler has ever taught us more. More than 5,000 objects were carefully cataloged from Tutankhamun's tomb. No other royal burial has ever shown us so clearly how ancient Egyptians prepared a king and a person for eternity. Tutankhamun's tomb is the first, and still the only, pharaoh's tomb ever discovered with its burial treasure largely intact. Every other royal burial we know, from the pyramids of the Old Kingdom to mastaba tombs to rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings, was looted in antiquity. Tomb robbery wasn't rare, it was expected. When those tombs were robbed, the treasure didn't vanish into secret vaults. Gold was melted down and reused. Jewels were pried out of their settings and reset into new objects. That is why intact royal burials almost never survive. Tut's tomb escaped that fate, not because it was better protected, but because it was small, hastily prepared, and quickly buried beneath debris. History forgot it, and that forgetfulness preserves something extraordinary. By 1922, after nearly 15 years of searching, Howard Carter was in his final funded season, excavating an area of the Valley of the Kings that most archaeologists believed had already been exhausted. Tutankhamun came to the throne as a child in the shadow of one of the most radical experiments in Egyptian history, the Amarna period. His father, Akhenaten, later remembered as a heretic king, had broken with centuries of tradition. He closed temples, sidelined the old gods, and reshaped Egyptian belief and art around the singular worship of the Aten. When Tut became king, Egypt quietly reversed course. The old gods returned, the temples reopened. Artists returned to familiar forms. Even the king's name changed. Born Tutankhaten, the living image of the Aten, he became Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun. But restoring order did not mean that power rested entirely with the young king. In the years following Akhenaten's death, Egypt was effectively guided by older, more powerful figures surrounding Tut. I, a senior court official and likely Tut's maternal grandfather, served as his advisor. Horemheb controlled the army, and Maya, the royal treasurer, controlled the resources needed to restore temples and monuments. All three exercised royal authority, something rarely seen under a strong, independent ruler. This has led historians to ask an important question. Was Tut a puppet king, or was he deliberately kept in the background while others competed for control of Egypt? What makes this period especially revealing is that the return to traditional religion was not a simple rejection of Atenism. Tut and his wife, Ankhesenamun, appeared to have followed a careful compromise, appeasing the old gods while preserving traces of Akhenaten's religious program. The clearest evidence appears on Tut's golden throne, which preserves both Atenist and traditional names side by side. Those names were not erased. This suggests continuity as well as change, a negotiated transition rather than a clean break. Tutankhamun's most important public statement was the restoration stela erected in the Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak. The text describes the damage caused during the Amarna period and outlines a program of repair, restoring temples, images, and divine names. It's unlikely that these decisions originated with a teenage king. Most scholars believe the name change and the restoration program were shaped by Ai and Horemheb, for whom restoring the old gods was both religiously and politically essential. Tut's reign was not significant because he ruled forcefully, but because, under his name, Egypt returned to its gods. Physically, Tut was fragile. Modern CT scans show that he likely had a club foot, a serious femur fracture near the end of his life, and a degenerative bone disease. Some studies have suggested possible craniofacial features, though these remain debated. Inside the tomb, archaeologists found dozens of walking canes. For years, these were assumed to be ceremonial symbols of authority, but many show clear wear at the base. These were not ceremonial. He used them. Despite his physical challenges, Tut had no cavities, a reminder that ancient Egyptian diets, low in sugar, could still support good dental health. Tut was also the product of royal incest, a common practice in Egyptian kingship intended to preserve divine bloodlines. He married his half-sister, Ankhesenamun. 2 stillborn daughters were buried with him. Tiny mummified bodies placed carefully in the tomb. Their presence speaks not of dynastic power, but of private grief. Tut did not die violently. There is no evidence of murder, no curse, no assassination. He likely died from complications related to infection, injury, and long-term genetic weakness. A reminder that divine kingship did not protect the body from biology. And yet, what awaited him in death was extraordinary. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, he encountered something the modern world had never seen before, a royal burial that was remarkably intact. The tomb was so tightly packed that Carter and his team could barely move. Objects filled every available space. They had to remove items simply to proceed. It was small, unusually small for a king. The walls were painted rather than carved. The imagery was executed quickly with flat yellow backgrounds instead of deeply carved relief. This was a tomb prepared in urgency, one that may not even have been intended for Tut at all. Some of Tut's burial equipment was not originally made for him. Names were altered, details adjusted, perfection gave way to necessity. And yet, Egyptians believed even a rushed tomb could still secure eternity if it was done correctly. Even the most famous object of all, the golden funerary mask, was not merely a portrait. On its back are inscribed protective spells. The mask was not designed to be admired. It was designed to function, to guard and transform the king. The mask does not show Tut as he was in life. It shows him as he needed to be in death, perfected, divine, and eternally whole. In ancient Egypt, beauty was never separate from belief. They believed that making something beautiful, balanced, complete, and carefully crafted was what allowed it to function spiritually. If an object was poorly made, incomplete, or incorrect, it did not work. Tut's body was wrapped in fine linen, layer after layer, with amulets carefully placed between the wrappings. Protection was built up gradually and deliberately as the body became sacred. Modern technology hasn't stripped this process of its meaning. Tut's body wasn't simply preserved, it was carefully dismantled, rebuilt, sealed with ritual, protected with spells, and positioned at the center of a cosmic system designed to make eternity possible. Then came the coffins, one nested inside another, wood, then gold, then solid gold. This was not excess, it was logic. Each layer reinforced permanence. Around him, the tomb unfolded like a map of the afterlife. Direction mattered. The west, where the sunset was associated with death and the beginning of the afterlife journey. That is why burials were linked to the west. The east, where the sun rose, symbolized rebirth. The king's body and ritual imagery were oriented so he could be reborn each day, just like the sun. The north was associated with the circumpolar stars, stars that never set. Aligning the king with the north linked him to eternity. The south represented origin and life force, the direction of the Nile source and traditional royal power. Distance mattered too. Objects placed directly on or around the body were meant to protect and transform the king. Coffins, the mask, amulets, and spells. Objects placed nearby were meant to sustain him. Food, clothing, cosmetics, weapons. Objects placed farther away in outer chambers related to movement and daily life, chariots, furniture, storage vessels. 6 full-size chariots were dismantled and stacked against the walls. Weapons were found as well, but most were symbolic, not practical. Lightweight shields decorated with scenes of royal victory were meant to magically defeat chaos, not real enemies. Only a few weapons were suitable for actual use, such as bow and arrows with sharp copper arrowheads, likely intended for hunting rather than warfare. In Egyptian thought, representation itself had power. A weapon did not need to be used physically to function magically. Jewelry was designed to move with the body. Cosmetics. Ritual statues stood ready to serve. But some of the most revealing objects were the smallest. Sandals with images of Nubian and Asiatic enemies on the soles, so the king could symbolically trample chaos with every step. Food. Inside the tomb were bread, beer, meat, fruit, and wine. Real food meant to be eaten, not symbols meant to be admired. Some of the wine jars were even labeled with the year of the king's reign, the vineyard where the wine was produced, its quality, and the name of the producer. These are among the earliest true vintage wine labels in history. Board games like Senet were also included. Cosmetics weren't vanity items. Oils, perfumes, and ointments protected the skin, soothed the body, and restored vitality. In the afterlife, the king would still need to care for his body. Food offerings weren't symbolic. Egyptians believed the dead continued to eat. Bread, beer, meat, and fruit sustained the Ka, the life force that required nourishment to survive. And games like Senet weren't just entertainment, they symbolized movement through danger, chance, and transformation. Playing the game mirrored the journey through the afterlife itself. These objects tell us that Tutankhamun wasn't buried only as a ruler. He was buried as a person, someone who expected to wake up, care for his body, eat, pass time, and move forward into eternity. One of the most beautiful objects in the tomb is Tut's golden throne, an inlaid seat that shows the young king seated while his wife, Ankhesenamun, gently anoints him with perfumed oil. This is not propaganda, it's intimacy. Egyptian art was not decorative, it was functional, meant to prepare the body and sustain eternity. While nearly every other royal tomb was looted in antiquity, his was passed over. History forgot him, and in doing so, preserved him. Carter's discovery did more than reveal gold. It showed us Egyptian belief in full operation, uninterrupted, intact, and breathtakingly confident. For a moment, the modern world did not see Egypt as ruins. It saw Egypt as the Egyptians intended it to be seen.